The community in Inverclyde it's amazing, you know. People are so nice and so kind. And if there's anything, you know, there's so much support. You wouldn't believe the support we have in Inverclyde for all different things. People all pull together. If there's a need, people all pull together, and they're so generous.
When I was a boy in Greenock, I used to come through to my aunt's, and she stayed in the big estate, which is wiped out now, and it's new houses in it. But at that time, it was a big sprawling estate, and we used to come up when the school holidays. She would say, "That's you going up to Aunt Flora's," and we were, yes, because we were in swimming down there and camping. This place was so busy in the days you couldn't believe. The shipyards, the rope works, the sugar factories, a lot of industry, all gone. There's only a few things here now, Amazon, one or two others. A great deal of unemployment here. It's a different world altogether. It's so busy this place was. Industry, sugar house, sugar factories, oh massive, you know, shipbuilding. They all worked on ships, and the Ferguson's the other one, Scott Lithgow's, and many other engineering places, all gone. These days are gone.
I know Inverclyde is struggling. Inverclyde Council has got massive deficits. They just haven't the resources to do what's needed. I don't think this word austerity is going away anytime soon. Greenock has always had a problem with alcohol, and now it's got a lot of drug problems.
The drugs problem in Inverclyde's massive, but there is help available. You know, there's lots of volunteers that help there.
I work with a few people who are really suffering, and it's not about victimising them and making them into criminals. They're suffering, but there's a hard attitude about people that do this here. I would love to be able to say to people, they're just people, they're in pain, they're only trying to numb the pain a little, and break down this barrier between they're terrible people and victimising them when they're actually the victims of something that was probably done to them. This area's got along since the yards closed before. The same streets I walk up and down now, my grandfather walked up and down in the 30s unemployed. And it's the exact same streets and the same situation, only now we need to depend on food banks and back home boxes because there's not enough allocation of funds. There's not enough cheese to go round.
There's always that positive there. You know, like I said, there's a lot of issues, and there's a lot of poverty, a lot of drugs problems, but all in all, the community spirit is great. Everybody all pulls together, and they're just too happy to help.
It's brought the whole community together, and Compassionate Inverclyde has really just, it's kind of looked at it from the outside first, and then it's kind of grabbed that. It's grabbed that kind of friendliness and the bringing together. It's just helped them, just helped the whole thing come together.
Compassionate Inverclyde is a social movement. It's a movement of looking and working with our community to work with ordinary people and making everyone recognise that they have something to offer somebody else, in particular at the time of need or at the end of life or in crisis. And it's everybody, health is everybody's business, as illness and death is everyone's business.
It's just a kindness programme looking at death, dying and helping each other in times of increased illness. Alison Bunn's put an awful lot of effort into this long before the actual programmes were up and running. Coming along to community council meetings, coming along to church meetings, etc. So that the people knew, before it actually launched, people knew what she was trying to do. And I think that has been invaluable.
But 12 years ago, I went to a conference and I heard Professor Alan Kelleher speak. And he's the guru in public health and palliative care. And the message that he was given at that time was around talking about difficult things, like issues around cancer and things like that, in a natural space where people met. So talking about prostate cancer in pubs, having beer mats with messages on them. And I was kind of thinking that really makes sense to normalise death and dying in society and start to almost just work with the people of our communities. So that was 12 years ago. And then 4 of us locally, the chief executive here at the time, Dorothy McElroy, myself, Derek Pearce, who was a planning manager with the local HSCP, and the education person, Stuart Milligan here, we were on a working group and we started to think about what would a compassionate community look like and what would Inverclyde look like as a compassionate community. And we put a proposal together of perhaps what that might look like. But that was about 8 years ago, and it's taken that length of time to get to where we are now. So it just didn't happen overnight. There's been a lot of thought and evolution from the initial ideas to what we have now. I started in January 2016, and during that year I was networking, talking to the community, doing a lot of engagement, and thinking about what might, from those conversations, what might be the most relevant things to develop. And then it was officially launched in March 2017. I set up a board, initially a Compassionate Inverclyde board, and I asked people who were particular decision makers as stakeholders in our community, like Police Scotland, Your Voice, HSCP, West College Scotland, the hospice. So naturally the leaders who make up a community, so that people were in it from the very beginning and understood what we were trying to do. And it was through their support that they then are the governance of the projects that are initiated. There's been a real interest and a real uptake. It's almost been like a catalyst for people to be given an opportunity to actually get involved in something that they believe in. We've got roughly about 160 volunteers, formal volunteers that have come through a process. However, there's many hundreds of volunteers in the community who donate or knit blankets or get involved.
My name is Mary Middleton. I'm 71 years old. I live in Greenock. I've worked the past 10 years for a baker's. I was a bakery manager in Kilmacombe, and 17 years previously I worked in the National Semiconductor, making microchips.
I'm Arlene Casimiro. I live in Greenock. I've always lived in Greenock. My life is just all about helping other people. Brought up my family and then went into care work.
My name's Thomas McKechnie. I live in Greenock. Stayed in England for a number of years. Came back to Greenock because I missed it.
My name's Ian Hamilton. I'm 76. Right, I'm a qualified engineer.
I'm Mary McCue, 67, now retired after 45 years in the NHS. Married, 2 children, 2 grandchildren, 2 terriers. I fill my days very nicely. I go to an art club, a writer's club, and the garden takes up the rest of the time. So fairly busy, but I'm from Greenock and I've stayed in Greenock all my life.
My name is Jessie Kelly and I worked in the care sector for 18 years and I retired last year, and I've always enjoyed working in the care sector, and I'm married with a family and grandchildren.
I'm Margaret McConnell. I was working in a care home and I get paid off due to medical reasons. So I was really a wee bit depressed with everything getting paid off because I loved my job so much. I just love caring for old folk. It's the kind of job I've always liked. And then when I get paid off, my mother sadly took very ill, so I cared for her until she died in the Beatson with cancer. So that's why I started doing what I'm doing, because it got me out for a wee while and I love doing what I'm doing.
My name's Tam, and I've been with Compassionate Inverclyde almost from the beginning when we heard about it. We heard about it in the Greenock Telegraph, this movement of common people trying to help other common people. And I was particularly drawn to the idea of it being a new start-up that's beneficial for the community in Inverclyde, and a blank page almost.
I'm Harriet, and I was born and brought up in Greenock. And when I left school, I joined the finance world, and I did a lot of travelling, 35 years, and eventually decided I wanted something more local with less travelling. So I took a total different career path, and I joined the care world. And the care world, I noticed there was a need. There's quite a lot of lonely people out there. And when I retired last year, I decided that's the route I'll go down and look and see what's out there that I could volunteer. And I found Compassion Inverclyde.
My name's William Weir. I come from Port Glasgow. I used to work as an IT consultant. As self-employed, I had a contract to service 30 sites within Scotland. So I used to travel around these sites, travelling up to 3,000 miles a week. I also had a pet shop in Port Glasgow and one in Greenock.
My name is Sandy Nimmo. I was born and bred and brought up in the East Coast, in a fishing town in the East Coast, and served my time as a joiner through there. I served my national service, and I was in the RAF Police for my national service. I then decided I preferred walking the streets. Instead of going back to the joinery, I travelled through to Greenock and joined the Greenock Police, where I served 30 years in the force. On leaving the force after my 30 years service, I then got involved in politics, and I got elected as a councillor for Greenock, then Inverclyde Council, where I served for 14 years.
I fell ill in 2014, and basically on the advice of the doctor, I gave up both the pet shops and the travelling around the country. At that time it was discovered I had a heart problem and also diabetes. Since then things have developed. I've now got kidney problems as well, so just one thing after another. They all are all interlinked anyway, you know, so the various illnesses. I then joined the local community council in Port Glasgow. I was quite involved in that, and that's where I heard about Compassionate Inverclyde.
It was a post on social media, on Facebook. A local lady had investigated this programme that initiated in America, and she thought it was such a good idea she could bring it to Inverclyde.
It was advertised in the Greenock Telegraph, and I think I was actually first to apply for it.
Alison Bunce came to the meeting. She's the programme lead for Compassionate Inverclyde. She came along to the meeting and explained everything about it, and I'm the minute secretary, so I was actually sitting writing down all the information, and I thought, oh, I like the sound of that, and I like the sound of that, and I like so basically it was about 6 months after that I happened to be on Facebook, and there they were appealing for volunteers to help, and I thought, I'm going to give that a try. Quite fancy that.
It was my podiatrist that came to the house. She started talking about Compassionate Inverclyde. Her father had been in the Larkfield unit down in Greenock, and she'd been sitting with him because he was dying and had been offered the services of Compassionate Inverclyde. He died shortly afterwards, so she didn't need to use Compassionate Inverclyde, but she talked about it very warmly and enthusiastically. So after she'd left, onto the trusty Google, found Alison Bunce's name, and the rest really was history. I'd looked into various things to do after I retired, children's panel, or just assorted things, and nothing just hit the spot. But I went down to see Alison, that will be about 18 months ago now, at the hospice, and we chatted, and she signed me up, and it's the one thing I don't regret.
Since I came to Inverclyde or Greenock away all these years ago, 60 odd years ago, I just want to give something back. The folk are great through here, and I feel that I'm helping people who really need possibly some assistance.
I just like to make a difference in people's lives, And if I can make a difference in people's lives, whether it's a minute, whether it's an hour, whether it's a day or whatever, then if I can make that difference, then that's what matters.
I'm the programme lead, so I'm responsible for everything that happens in every single arm of each of the projects. I had 4 strategic objectives, and they were about improving wellbeing, raising awareness in education, developing compassionate citizenship, and helping organisations become more compassionate. Compassionate Inverclyde offers a No One Dies Alone programme. And No One Dies Alone, really, it's for people who are actively dying in the last few years of life, who don't have family or friends visiting, or if their family are exhausted, or if a family member would like to be with somebody when they die, but is frightened to be there on their own, then we can support that. And it really is volunteer-led.
We have a WhatsApp group, and the messages all get put on there. So if they need, if there's somebody that needs a bit of support, the message goes on, and then the rota actually starts filling itself. So somebody will say maybe, oh, I can come now, or I can do from 12 till 2 o'clock, and I can do from... So the rota starts sorting itself out, and that we just take it from there.
We got Rebecca to up on the whiteboard, and we put suggestions, and we came up with the notion that we would have a separate NODA rota WhatsApp group that only had stuff about the rota, and you would kind of sign into that if you were able to commit. And we did say 6 months. If you were able to commit for the next 6 months, you would do shifts, then you would put yourself forward for that. And that seems to have worked really, really well. Thank you, Derek, for setting that up and keeping us organised, and then Elaine and Fiona and Harriet and Gillian and anybody who cuts and pastes, Daniela. And it really has made a difference. Like, the more people that are taking, you know, a bit of the responsibility away from one person has really worked. So
what I was going to try in the next month or so from now was at the weekend, say on a Saturday or a Sunday, we fill up a rota up to and including the next weekend. And even if someone's already put in the shift that you're able to do, is to put your name next to theirs as a second, so that either if you've got 2 patients, which sometimes happens to us, or if you sign up on Saturday saying you could do, you know, Wednesday, but it comes to Wednesday morning and you're unwell, we've got a backup person, so that we wouldn't break the cover, but we would have scope there for anything happening to any of us, or circumstances changing and having more than one patient.
So we're there for like from maybe 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night or midnight, and then there's somebody who'll go and do a night shift with the person that we're sitting with.
I think I would like to do more night shift, if that's all right. You'd rather do 10 to 7 or something like that. But just phone and ask me if you need me, and I'll be quite happy to do it for free.
Yeah. And that's great. And I think what we'll try and do, Charlotte, is get into a routine of when we phone you, so that you'll know on a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever day it would be, like for the next week, you could say, well, I'm available on Tuesday night or Thursday night.
Fine. Yes, absolutely fine.
Thank you. Derek, would you take that on board?
Aye,
would you phone Charlotte?
Yeah. Sunday afternoon, do you, Charlotte?
Yes.
Right, I'll phone you on a Sunday afternoon every week then.
Yes, right. Any particular time?
We're contacted by the caring staff, whether it's the nursing home or the hospital. They contact us and give us details about the patient's situation. And then we draw up a rota. And our part is to just go and sit with the patient. You know, being a loving presence in the room when there's no one else. Sometimes there's no one else because the patient is alone in the world. But other times they have relatives who are just exhausted by the whole caring process and just need a bit of respite. So that's when we're called in.
We then have the back home boxes, and back home boxes is a community act of kindness. And really that came from a conversation in the community around holidays and talking about, you know, your friends or your family normally get you a pint of milk or a loaf of bread when you get home. But then imagine getting out of hospital and you live alone and you don't even have as much as a pint of milk to make a cup of tea. And I thought we could do something with that.
It's a box is gifted to each patient who is discharged from Inverclyde who lives alone. That's the only stipulation. It doesn't matter what age they are. The only stipulation is they live alone.
And then we go round the wards. And if there's anybody leaving home that's on their own, you get a box, which includes tea, coffee,
milk, sugar, jam,
bread, a fresh loaf each time, a tin of meat, tin of soup, biscuits, packet of biscuits, and breakfast cereal.
The box also contains lovely cards which have been prepared by the children in primary schools, welcoming them back home to their own house, and knee blankets which are donated by other volunteers and care homes. They actually do them. It's excellent.
And that's been running for over a year and a half now. Nearly 2 years, and we have distributed 2,400 boxes in that time, mainly to people over the age of 80. At least a third goes to people over the age of 80. And on the back of that, then we were able to decide that perhaps these people who live alone, quite a lot of the population that in Inverclyde, basically we gave them the box. That meant that they were going home alone, and we found that it would be a good idea to maybe have a visitor to follow that up. So we've had back home boxes, now we have back home visitors, and they meet on a weekly basis with the person.
And we give them a phone, and if it's suitable for them and what time would be suitable for them, then we can come and visit and sit and have a wee chat with them, and a wee cup of tea and things, and just general chit chat about different stuff in their lives and things that they want to talk about.
I've got 3 people that I go and visit, but what you find in the community now is the loneliness. People want to go out into the community, so there's a need for that. So if they're mobile and they're able, then I've been taking people out in my car. And one of the places is reminiscing and taking people to places of their past that they want to. Like, there's a lady where she wants to go and visit her campsite where she camped when she was young. So I took her around out and she was over the moon. So it kind of breaks up their day as well.
There's also the hub. It's a Tuesday morning, and the people go in there. MD at all can go into that, and they're offered tea, coffee, soup, companionship, and a chat to each other, and, you know, just to have a wee bit of company.
That started as a bereavement cafe, way back at the very beginning, and then we recognised, why are we siloing bereaved people into their own group? Why don't we just bring our whole community together? So no matter what the need is, you would come along for a coffee and a connection and chat, and that's going really, really well, and that's run by just members of our community, members of Compassionate Inverclyde.
So we make up refreshments and talk to them, get to know them. It's just like one big family.
At the minute, I've got 70 active companions for the No One Dies Alone programme. I've trained 109. One
of the other NODA volunteers and myself will interview prospective candidates for NODA, back home boxes, back home visitors. It's amazing how nervous people are, but very quickly, you know, sort of realise that we're going to all be in the same boat. NODA is not necessarily for everyone, but people can be excellent at back home visiting or back home boxes, etc. So within Compassionate Inverclyde, there's really a place for everyone. We do ask that people haven't had a recent family bereavement. And I think really with the questions, there's pro forma questions that we do ask. I don't necessarily ask the questions cold and then sit and scribble. I tend to try and encourage the people to have conversation, to talk to me, to tell me about themselves, to tell me about what people would, how they would describe them. And at the end of it, I then have a picture of the person, a whole picture of the person, and as to whether I feel that NODA is the place for them. Alison will read through the form as we've completed it, and we probably tend to go with this. And people that we've not quite said no to, but we've said, how about you come into Compassionate Inverclyde with the back home boxes to start off with and see what you think. Nobody said no. They've all been quite happy with that.
We also have volunteers at the back home box store from the Fitzgerald Centre. So it's a teaming up with them, which is adults with learning disabilities. So they come along and volunteer, make up boxes for us for the patients. So that's a collaboration really between Health and Social Care Partnership locally and the Fitzgerald Centre.
Partnership is really key. We work as closely as possible with most organisations in Inverclyde, like all of the schools, a lot of the churches, the Health and Social Care Partnership, the hospice, Your Voice, Inverclyde Royal Hospital, the care homes, some shops.
85% of at least of all the goods for the back home boxes basically have been donated by all these groups. We have individuals as well, individual kids coming up to, we actively encourage them to come up to the back home box store and they can see where their donation goes and help make up boxes. It's really just a whole community, something amazing.
As we move forward, the vision has always been that we would hopefully make it sustainable in our community and without me or whatever leading it. But I just don't want you ever to forget the essence of what we're actually about making a difference to the people in Inverclyde by being kind and compassionate. And it's really, really, really important that we promote that message all the time. So if we have got groups coming in, that's the reason why the group's there, whether the young person's there, it's to have a greater understanding of what kindness is and how that person can be kind by doing maybe even the smallest thing. The children in all the local schools and youth groups will make welcome home cards, and a welcome home card will go in the box. And they've been really greatly received. The feedback has been amazing. What people are saying is that someone actually really cared enough to do that, and it's made such a difference to them. And perhaps somebody who's never had children involved before, and all of a sudden they've had a card made by a young person, is just like overwhelming to somebody and a real gift.
So on a Saturday morning we go up and do the back home boxes and just pack all the boxes and put the cards in. And the folk, the people that get them really love them. Yeah. And they write to Alison, she's the lead for Compassionate Inverclyde, and she gets a lot of feedback about the boxes, and folk are just delighted, absolutely delighted with the cards and things. Yeah, it's such a difference. It's such a nice thing to do for people. Especially if someone is going home and they're on their own. Yeah. And then they open up this box, and I think it just means to them that someone cares, or cares enough to do that for them. It's a lovely idea. And it makes a big, big difference.
I think the schools are very important. And we've actually had wee nursery kids in as well, into the back home store.
Alfie just loves doing the boxes, and Sam just loved pushing the trolley. You can't see above it, but he always sees this wee head. And I think that's a good way to start. And okay, you have to judge what ward they're allowed in. You can't just say, you need to sit there, you're not allowed in here. You've got to judge that because they're young. But the Larkfield unit was great for them, just to go round and just sort of stand there. And I think that's the age to get younger kids in school.
It's not just for us, it's to involve young ones with it as well.
Children have a difficult time nowadays. They don't all have the best of homes, they don't have the best of our environments and upbringing. But I think to be taught, or to be encouraged, I should say, not taught, encouraged to be kind, caring and compassionate that could change the world.
I love people. I mostly love elderly people. They're my favourite people. I love the older generation. I think, you know, we tend to forget our older generation have had lives. You know, you might see that wee elderly lady or elderly man sitting in a chair, you know, and their mobility's not great and they maybe do have a wee bit of dementia or whatever. You forget these people have lived full lives. You know, the stories they're able to tell you about their lives is amazing. And that's really rewarding for me. I could sit with an elderly person and speak to them till the cows come home. I just love older people. They're my favourite people.
When we come here, like I said, in the morning, we're made welcome right away, and the girls here are the helpers, and the first thing they greet you is, would you like a cup of tea, make you comfortable, or do you want coffee? And there's tea cakes, buns, anything you want, you know. And normally later on there's soup and something to eat. Everybody in here gets on really, really well, and it's a good laugh. They call it the hub, but it's like forming a club, you know. They can't do enough. They even give people soup and cartons to take home. People that are staying themselves. When they think of people, they've got a lot of thought. The girls are very compassionate, and that's why they call it Compassionate Inverclyde here.
Well, the lady yesterday, she said she loved to do the choir, and she's quite a quiet lady, and so I said to her, what kind of songs would you sing? And she kind of started to sing a couple of wee songs, a wee smile came to her face, and then she said, oh, the man over there, he used to sing in the choir as well, so I introduced him to come over. And I said, what songs? So we had a wee sing-song at the end up, which they enjoyed, and she said it brought back happy memories. So I felt it was a difference.
We have a singing group, so we sing together, and that is, again, for loneliness and social isolation. And that's just for fun, it's not a choir or anything like that, it's just to bring people together.
Alison knows that I sing in a band, and she suggested maybe we could have a wee singing group. So that's how that came about. It's great fun, absolutely brilliant fun. Anyone can go. We have it in the Access building at the hospice, and it's just for an hour every second Tuesday night. But it's a cross between a singing group and a Zumba group, you know, and everybody goes there and has a cup of tea. We sing and we dance along as well, and it's great fun.
I see love, it is a flower, and you, it's only seed.
I love going to a singing group as well. It's a good laugh. It's really good. Sing a lot of up-to-date songs, a lot of songs from the 60s, like that. It's really good.
We're all very sociable as well. We have wee nights together, and we all support each other when we need to as well. But so we had a Halloween party, and we had the suggestions for that. We had, and one of the suggestions that I have never heard in my life before was something about one-eyed, one-horned purple people eater or something, suggested by one of our ladies. One of our crazy ladies, might add. She's great fun, and she's been asking for Christmas songs since October, I think. For a friend, of course, asking for a friend. So yeah, it's all good fun.
We've got palliative care companions, and that's people who will go out and support a family in order for the family to support somebody who's dying at home.
There was a gentleman actually who had terminal cancer, and he had dogs, so our volunteers stepped in and walked the dogs. You know, even things like that, things that you know, maybe somebody can't manage to cut their grass, or they're too ill to do that. our volunteers. We've always got volunteers that are so willing to help anybody with anything.
In the No One Dies Alone programme, we've supported since December, the 1st of December 2017, we've supported 62 patients. And we've sat for over 1,700 hours.
When you're actually sitting there, there's no medical function in it at all. All you're being is one human being, being present, clearly present, when another human being is in the process of dying, because dying is a process. It isn't a 1 second thing. It can be quick, obviously, or it can be prolonged. And the comfort that people get when there's someone there to be with them, in the sense of just sitting. Some people do find from the families or whoever what sort of music they like. Maybe they'll play music. Maybe some people have a small book, and maybe they might say a poem or something, depending on the level of consciousness. You may ask the person, how are you feeling? You're not really doing very much apart from actually being present. But in my opinion, presence is not very common in this world at the best of times. Most of us aren't really that present. If you can have a presence and a feeling of, should we say, compassion towards the person, it can make a real big difference. This week I was sitting with an old lady of 95, and she was responsive in a way. When I went in, I only sat for 4 hours to let the family who had come from somewhere else go and have a shower and have a break. So it takes a strain off the family that you can say, this woman's perfectly fine and there's someone with her. And when the family come back and they see this old woman who's almost comatose, clearly giving me eye contact and sort of trying to communicate. Now, that for me is evidence, as far as I'm concerned, that if you're really present with a person, even if it's the last time, they can get some comfort. Instead of looking at a ceiling, they have got someone in the room with them. And even when almost unconscious, I believe that there is a contact can be made, and it can just be a comfort for them. And it is also a real big comfort for the family, because they don't know how long this process will be. It could be hours or it could be days.
If the patient's responsive, we can converse on whatever level the patient is able to deal with. If they're non-responsive, personally, I read poetry to them with some background music. And where possible, tactile, if I can hold a hand or just maybe stroke whichever part, I find that helpful, possibly for me as much as the patient.
It's really nice just sitting in that quiet with somebody, you know. As I said, it's a very kind of spiritual experience. And I've only actually had one person that passed when I was sitting, so it was probably, I'm trying to think, it was the first person I sat with actually. And it was an elderly lady, a lovely wee lady. And her family lived away, and it was snowing at the time. So when the message came onto WhatsApp, I only live a wee couple of minutes away from the hospital. So I thought I can get there. It'd been snowing and everything, the weather was quite bad. So I volunteered to go there, and I went and I sat with a lady. I wasn't there that long, maybe an hour, when she took her last breath. And just at that point, it's important for me that people aren't on their own then.
With all the people I've sat with, one gentleman died with me. He was still conscious when I went into the room, was able to nod and to shake his head. It had been an extremely sunny day, even though it was winter, and the blinds in his room were closed, because obviously the sun was shining into his face. The nurses came in to turn him, and I obviously left the room. And when I came back in, there was an imperceptible change in his condition. Perhaps it's something I noticed as a nurse. But his eyes were open, but he was no longer communicating. But his eyes were looking out the window at what was the beginning of the most glorious sunset. I opened the blind and started to describe it to him. And as I was describing it to him and the sun was setting, he took his last breath. I then went to tell the nurses that he had died, and then I left because my role is complete. But when I got down to my car, this gentleman who I'd only known for 2 hours and 45 minutes, I didn't know if he was a good man, a bad man, a happy life, a sad life. I sat in my car and wept for him because I had the same empathy as I would have had for a patient that I'd nursed for a long period of time.
There's various age groups, and I think the first person to sit with your own age group, it brings it home to you that it's nice to have people beside you at that time of your life.
When people are born, there are hands welcome into the world, and there should be hands there just to hold them while they're leaving the world. I think that's very important. No one should die alone, and that's what we make sure happens.
I love it. We're just like one big family now. People I never met before. We're so close. It's unbelievable.
I just love working with people. And my daughter, who's got a medical illness, she's now started it about 3 months ago, and she loves it as well. So she does. And it's made a big difference to my daughter, who, before she done it, she didn't go out at all. I couldn't get her out, and she does a Friday afternoon, and she loves doing the backbone box. So it's made a difference to her as well.
Maybe I get some of them up their noses at times as being cheeky to them, but they are no. It was a great team we've got, and this is one of the benefits I find, getting out and having a good laugh with them, and they all work hard.
We just have a lot of fun. I mean, myself being in the store, I've effectively got 40 people feeding me cups of tea all day, every day, which is great. I really enjoy the company as well. You know, there's 4 or 5 people on a shift. We always make time to have a cup of tea and a chat.
The feedback we get coming in is amazing. Thank you letters and that. And we've even had donations of money from people who have got box who said, well, look, we just want to help you. I mean, the reaction of these people are really first class.
They're absolutely thrilled. People are just... In fact, one lady came back into hospital. She was discharged 1 week and was brought back in the next week, and she brought her blanket in with her for over her bed. She just absolutely loved it.
We get phone calls all the time. We get email messages just saying really how fabulous it is, the whole idea.
There's a 99-year-old man discharged on a Sunday night to Dunoon by ambulance, and he had been in hospital for 5 weeks, and he had not a thing at home that was edible. So he was so grateful for this box because it tided him over until his carer, or whoever it was, I don't know who it was, came in the next day to see to him.
They find the bread and the milk in particular really, really helpful, but they rave about the cards and the blankets and the personal touches that have been put into the box that makes a difference. And I don't know how many people have said, but it, you know, like somebody's cared, it brought me to tears. You know, like that's what they've said, it's brought me to tears. Men as well as women saying that. So it's very powerful.
It's very rewarding to see simple things like saying good morning to somebody and you put a smile on their face. When you're leaving, the back home visit especially, when you're leaving them and you say, now, I'll leave it up to you. I'm here for you. So you phone me or let me know if you want another visit, because really at the end of the day, we're there for them. And when they turn around and say, oh, my world wouldn't be the same if you weren't in it. So you see the difference and people acknowledge it, whether it's by actions or whether it's by verbally telling you. It's very rewarding.
And sometimes that's the only person they see all day is one of us going in and sitting with them for 2 hours. But it breaks their day for 2 hours. It breaks that person's day and they love it.
I just talk to people. I be present and talk to them. And we also do some Tai Chi here. And because a lot of these people, they're in their own way, they're quite lonely and stressed, and they get a lot of comfort from people paying attention, being present with them. How's your dog? What's happening about your shoulder? Simple things, because there's an epidemic of loneliness here in this part of the world. In all parts of the world, you may be surrounded by people, but they may not hear you. Here, you've got the opportunity to say, whatever somebody wants to talk about, you just be there for it, and you can see them livening up. And if I can get them out their chairs, and I can say a few simple exercises, really the basic exercises will make you feel better. Or I suggest to them, if you learn these exercises, go to the park and do it. Go and sit. Go find somewhere that's beautiful for you and sit there and flap your arms or whatever it is you want to do. Get out your chair. Be alive. Be in nature. Some of them maybe teach a little bit, a few simple tricks of meditation maybe, or a few things to relax them. And then I ask them over a period, how's it working? What's working, what didn't work? And then we modify it a little. None of them want to be Bruce Lee, but nobody wants to break a hip. So there is a body of evidence that says gentle movement, especially involving balance, can reduce hip injuries in old people by up to 40%. And it makes you feel good. And I'm trying to strip it down to the very, very basic move that someone can do, that you can go away and play with this for a while and come back to try and get back into their bodies, realign their bodies, maybe get them out the chair. We spend too long sitting. So if you can even get someone to say, when you're going up for a cuppa, try flapping your arms or try doing some simple exercise. And as far as I can discern, they seem to be enjoying it, as long as it's not done in a grim manner.
The Compassionate Inverclyde, and especially this hub, has got a real important part to play, because there is a lot of older people like myself, both men and women, and come winter they're indoors a lot. And even some shut themselves away because of their spouses died and different things. You wouldn't believe some people amount of times hardly been over the door. The relatives trying to encourage them. There was a man brought in here, he'd hardly been over the door for 3 years. His daughter brought him. I've seen him now in a wheelchair and he's out about. He hires one of the mobility scooters. His wife had died and he had an illness. He was been down very, very thin and he was quite frail. He come up here and after a number of weeks it kind of boosted his confidence. Now he's about the town. I mean, it helps people in all different ways, because when people are older and they experience different falls in their life, if you want to call it that, you know, maybe their wife is dead or their husband's died, it's amazing how they've not as many friends and some are not got the time for them and different things. It's just a fact of life, whereas they've got time for you in here all the time. And they can divert you to different things, and anything you need in help, they'll sort it out for you. It's not a problem to them. Staff here, the whole lot of them.
2 years ago, maybe, doctor says to me, there's something up with you. Don't know what it is, but there's something up with you. Try a bereavement counsellor, because I had not long lost my mother, then my wife, then friends. So then, at Gateways, they still were desperate for somewhere else. So I says, what about trying that Compassionate Inverclyde? So they gave me a wee flyer to look at, and I did not like the look of that, because Compassionate Inverclyde with me was with it people with a with it slogan with a lot of bloody with it ideas, and I was not coming here. But she says to me, what about giving it a try? So I agreed I would give it a try. I wasn't going to refuse her. So I ended up coming through that door there. When she says to me, I come through that door, I was not liking this at all. I wasn't coming here. I knew if I got in the door and it was no nice, I was out the door again. That's the way I felt. I got in the door, and before I could take 2 steps, they must have seen on my face that I was going to turn around and run. That's the way it was. Somebody grabbed me, gave me their seat. Somebody else gave me a coffee. somebody slid the biscuits up, and there I was sitting in front of a lot of smiley faces, feeling welcome. And then I talked to a few people. I talked to a lot of people that day. One person and especially, she had problems and she sat and talked to me for a good while. And I realised I'm not the only person with problems. So I went out of there that day feeling really good. So back ever since. Every time I come in after that, I begin to get this feeling, because there was that much good going on. It's busier now, but when I would hear about all the things they were doing, and I would feel very humble. You know, a strange thing to feel humble when you're in the middle of all these people. But I would go home feeling good. Every time I came, if I had problems, somebody would step up and talk to me, sit down, have a chat with me. Again, I went feeling good. And I began to realise that, as I says to Margaret up at Sandwich, these are just no ordinary people. These people are special. They've got that wee spark and that wee bit of magic. And it's that puts the compassion into compassionate Inverclyde.
When we do help families with the No One Dies Alone programme, we got a lot of feedback there as well that they're really grateful for our help. It can be obviously so exhausting, especially if it's maybe a family just with, you know, maybe one daughter, one son, whatever, and they're then trying to take turns at staying with their relative until they pass on. But if the relative's there for 2 to 3, 4 days or whatever, it can be very, very tiring.
We sat with a person who was dying within the No One Dies Alone programme, and the family were exhausted, and there was one daughter, and she was able to go home and have a rest. And she then knew that her dad was being supported by our team, and she wrote a beautiful letter to say that meant such a lot. But not only did it mean such a lot for somebody to be with her dad, but it meant such a lot for somebody to be actually able to sit and listen to her also when at the changeover. And she feels that will benefit her in her bereavement, because she's able to think about that time and not in a way that is really horrendous, but it was made better by somebody actually being there and supporting.
I get a taxi to McKechnie house. I was doing a night shift, and the taxi driver came up and picked me up. He was asking me, did I work then? I said, no, I do Noja. He asked me all about Noja, and I explained to him. He says that his mother had passed away, and he was a carer for his dad, and what a great thing I was doing and all this, and he asked me how long I'd been doing it, and I told him. So I was getting out the taxi and I had £20, and I went to give him, and he went, let's get change, and he went, no. He said, put that back in your pocket, I don't want it. He said, that's a great thing you're doing. He says, and it should be more getting heard about it everywhere else.
And not only are the people, the community benefiting from this, we as volunteers benefit, because you find within the volunteers they're in need of some sort of compassion, and they could be lonely themselves.
I'm grateful for a husband who puts up with me, and to be able to come to groups like this. So after a stressful day at work, worrying about stupid things, that you can come here and appreciate what life's all about.
So I'm grateful for my network of support that I've got from my own family and being able to offer that to other people. But I think especially tonight I'm grateful for my Daisy cuddles.
Grateful for her, definitely, but also that she's going to grow up in this community that cares about other people and wants to make a difference, and is really going to see it, you know, that there is this out there, and you know it's going to make a difference for new women's growing up.
I was grateful today that I went and met that old gentleman in his home through this organisation, able to share his story with me. I think we're going to be good friends, and it gives me a good feeling to say we're doing something good, And the other thing is, I go to an old folks' home and there's about 12 people and I try and teach them Tai Chi or a bit of relaxation. And there's one old lady at 90, and from the first day, she screams, "What's he doing? He's making it up! Don't listen to what he says!" And she keeps it up for an hour at a time. And guess what? Today she was like, "All right, son."
We're all very different. We all come from different backgrounds. We're part of something that is innovative, because it's only Inverclyde that do this, apart from, of course, the Atlantic. We are made feel worthwhile, we are welcomed, and you just get such a rewarding feeling for being able to support the person or the person and their family, and indeed the nursing team, by just doing what we want to do, by being a volunteer. It privileges it. That's it. It encapsulates it all. It's a privilege.
I feel as though that I'm part of the community, part of being involved with the community and part of being involved with people.
We've supported families not only from Inverclyde, because people we're sitting with, the families can be scattered right across the world, never mind Scotland. We're supporting people who go home, whatever their age. We had a 19-year-old who just moved to Inverclyde, who suddenly found herself in hospital going home. She was in a new flat. We've made sure she had something, to eat and drink, etc. We're supporting people who sit alone in their house when they go home and have no family or nobody that goes in, perhaps a carer quickly going in and out in a short period of time. I think we are supporting the wider community and raising an awareness of what can be offered to people in times of sadness, in times of loneliness, in times of, in some ways, deprivation. We can support them in such a wide variety of ways.
I think it means a lot to the people who benefit from it. It's in the current climate, as I say, isolation is a big thing, inequality is a big thing, and the people who are helping, the people in need, they're not marvellous, skilled people, they're ordinary people. Perhaps they've lived a life of the people we're trying to help, but it's just a very basic, personal, human level, and I think that's where it has its strength.
It's just been a catalyst for an opportunity to actually start to be kind, and kindness is infectious, and the more people start to be kind, the more other people want to get involved, and they see the benefits, and the benefits to young people, old people, people in between. It's quite remarkable, and it also opens up gates to talk about things that are difficult to talk about, like dying.
We collect from people donations. We maybe go to Tesco's in Port Glasgow and have a day there, and just explain to people, because it'd be surprising like how many people still haven't heard of us. It would also surprise you the amount of people that do know about Compassionate Inverclyde, and people are just so happy to give and so happy to help.
I'm always in Tesco in Port Glasgow. I had no idea the number of people, particularly a wee lady who came up and said, "I got a back home box and I could not believe that total strangers were doing this for me." And she had this armful of groceries for me, a wee soul who probably had very little.
I think we're getting a higher profile now, and people are appreciating what can be done, and they're passing it on, the ripple effect.
Spread it, spread the word, and you don't want to grow too big, but spread the word and get it out there.
You hear people saying, "Do you know that? I didn't know that compassion was about." And they're just amazed at how good a charity it is. And we've had a good few awards for it. So we must be doing something right, somewhere in the line.
We have been awarded 6 different awards, from a COSLA Excellence Award to, on Saturday I won the Scottish Champions Caring Award from the Sunday Mail and Daily Record. And our community and the people in the community are being recognised for doing the great work that they're doing and the difference that it's making to people in the community. People from Scottish Government to local authorities have become very interested in Compassionate Inverclyde and want to be doing something similar, or have seen something work in Inverclyde and think, we would like that, how do we do it? And have asked questions and have become interested.
From your local government point of view, if in the political view they shared our ethics, then it would maybe make them a lot better as well. Spread it, the kindness and the compassion, rather than out there all fighting and stand in their own corner, work as a team rather than in their own corner.
The plans for the programme are just as it keeps evolving. So there's not any written plans or there's no definitive outcomes that need to be met, but just as it's almost like grounded theory. You have a concept and you go along those lines, and then something new develops and you go with that.
There's a new concept coming in, a comfort bag, which is going to contain a blanket, a knee blanket for people, because sometimes it gets cold at night sitting in the wards. Water, biscuits, toothbrush, toothpaste, just general things that people would use.
And I think that'll be really great for people who are sitting with a dying person, and a comfort bag will have things in it that might be helpful at that time.
If a patient comes into A&E and they're alone, somebody could be phoned to come and sit with that person until sometimes it's hours before they're seen. Some of us could come in and sit with that person until the doctors have seen them, which I thought was quite nice. It's easy, but it's nice. And I have done that myself. Come in and sat with a lady who was on her own. Just to talk, make the time pass a bit quicker for them. Nothing spectacular, just friendship, really.
We're going to have a Compassionate Inverclyde award scheme for organisations, and that will be, we will work with organisations to help them to become more compassionate to either the employees or what they're doing in their culture, and that'll be a bronze, silver and gold award.
One of the other things that we're trying to get set up is kindness pebbles, which basically is a pebble, painted pebble, which is distributed all over Inverclyde in random places. The idea just being that somebody finds it, keeps it or passes it on.
I would like to do maybe a weekend and bring some people together and say, we're going to do a general thing, find some location and do something and say, let's understand more about stress and what makes us unhappy and what promotes well-being. If we can get a core people doing this, it will expand on its own. We just need the initial ignition, and then it'll take off, and it'll take whatever form it is. But we're open to new things.
It makes sense as part of a compassionate community that, like from birth to death, that we're ordinary people helping ordinary people in various guises.
I've seen friendships starting off in there where people are talking that wouldn't necessarily talk, bringing the community together, and always we're trying to expand and say, what do people need? How can we help it? How can we facilitate this?
I think it's majorly important because it has brought a whole community together through all different ages. It's completely intergenerational. And it just is so free to evolve that it's quite unique.
There's so many bad things going on in this world, but so many good things, just like Compassionate Inverclyde. You can feel the love.
I've got a song, people all the world join in, join the love train. I think join the compassionate train. Do you know the song, people all the world join? Start a love train. I think the compassionate train, we should join it.
We are just ordinary people. You've seen how ordinary we all are. There's no airs and graces. There's no, we just all pitch in, we all help each other, and we are just all ordinary people.
It just allows anyone who is a human being to offer their skills and their experience and their expertise to somebody else in a way that's beautiful.
Well, I'll be here as long as I can. till I pop my clogs. I might end up having an ODA bed.
I stayed at home probably for about 3 weeks into lockdown, and I just thought, no, I can't do this. I can't stay in this house. And having been a long-term volunteer, it just came to my knowledge that this place was really, really busy and so many people were in isolation and shielding. So in the 3rd week of lockdown, I just came back up, started working again with Alison and Daniela, and the provision of isolation boxes, back home boxes. We did a massive big request on Facebook for male and female nightwear, toiletries, the things that the patients needed because they weren't allowed to have visitors come in to see them. So it was really just making sure that patients were comfortable in the hospital, that people were getting things delivered to them out in the community that they required.
There's donations coming in, there's stuff needing to be organised and sorted out. And we kind of, I suppose, really invited ourselves to join. And we would come, we spoke to Alison once about it and said, right, you've got people coming in 10 till 12, we'll come in later and we'll stay on till sort of 2 o'clock. And it just evolved. And I suppose just like Topsy, it grew. So now we do come down at 10 in the morning and we kind of stay a wee bit longer to kind of tidy up. So I suppose it just kind of naturally evolved that we would do what needed to be done. And the donations that come in are overwhelming. The whole concept of Compassionate Inverclyde is ordinary people helping ordinary people. And that's what people are doing. And I just find it absolutely overwhelming. We say we need crackers, crackers appear. We say we need deodorant, deodorant appears. People just respond to Messenger, to Facebook, to anything, to requests. And I just find it overwhelming.
Each Monday, Wednesday and Friday we're open. We do a collection. We try and separate it into like dry goods, tins of soup, whatever. It's just basically the way it's the idea you see it set out here. And then we take it down on a Tuesday to Compassionate Inverclyde. So this is just what we've had in basically today, which is a good amount. So we usually got a full car full. The people in Port Glasgow have been excellent in supporting us. And some people, if we've not been able to get to the shops, they've gave us cash. And what we've done is checked with Compassionate Inverclyde what the shortages are. And we've bought these shortages with the cash. And if we're in the shop, sometimes somebody say, what do you do with all that milk? And we'll say it's for Compassionate Inverclyde. And they'll give us another £10 or something like that. It's...
They're so generous, people.
It's been surprising how generous the people have been, actually.
We had one woman in Midton made about 100 of these cotton bags that you give to the nurses and the staff, and they can put their uniform inside it and put it straight in the washing machine as soon as they get home, so that they're not having to handle their potentially infected uniform.
The back home boxes are still going strong. It's just they're being given out in a different way.
People have had to come to us because we've not been allowed up in the ward for virus risk.
So we certainly still phone and say, we're here till about 2 o'clock. If you need anything, we've still got back home boxes. So I think it's actually opened the eyes of a great many staff who've come down here for the first time.
The main things that change is isolation boxes. It was a back home box, and now suddenly we're going, what would this person need for a meal? A lot of people, believe it or not, in the community don't have cookers, etc. They just have a microwave.
Yeah, I've got a 20-year-old female down in Inverclyde. She's got no contact with her family. She was working until this happened in the food industry, and she lost her job with no furlough. So she had to apply for universal credit, which took ages and ages to sort out because so many people were applying for benefits. And we got a call from her, and basically it was a case of, I have no money, I have nothing in the fridge, I have no one I can call, can you help me? And that breaks your heart. That is so sore. So we can ask her, what do you like, what do you need? Right down to sanitary equipment, you know, because people have, if they're isolating, shielding, they've got no money and you can't get a bus to go up to Greenock, what do? So we just fill the bags, and it's the look on her face that somebody cares.
Once we're finished here of an afternoon, Lindsay and I will simply deliver prescriptions. It was from Alison Bunce. It was CVS, which is Community Volunteer Service. They kind of coordinate it. The requests come in from people. They had to fill out a form through the GP, etc., to say that they required to have their prescriptions collected and delivered. And Alison asked for volunteers that would help with this. I sent a private message to say, can I help? Can I take some of the pressure off you? And then I got it to coordinate myself. So what happens is that the CVS bounce it off Alison, and she quite literally bounces the email off to me. And I've now got a team of 7 people. I had some more, but they've all gone back to work, etc. One of them here. And I will simply say, good evening all, about 5 o'clock or so. Tomorrow we've got 10 prescriptions, 3 from McDade, some from Loy's, and then they come in to me and say, yeah, this is what I can help with. We don't deliver on a Saturday and Sunday, but we deliver all the other days of the week. There's a mother, father and daughter that we visit. They all get a huge bag of prescriptions. And it's the friendliness. It's when I say I'm on my way and they open the door, they greet me as if I'm a friend, actually, as I hand them in and kind of drop them into the bag that they leave them in for a certain period of time before they can safely take them out again. It's an eye-opener. It's my grandfather used to have an expression I never really understood and probably still don't understand what it means. He said, we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. And I think it means under the sun, we are all the same. Whether we're helping somebody, they're helping us, and we're spreading it around. And people were doing, back home visiting for people that had left hospital, but there's lots and lots of people isolated within the community. And there's just lots of the team, back home box people, NODA people, making phone calls once, twice a week, just having a blether and a catch up with folk. And I think that's absolutely vital. Yeah. And that's particularly, I think, for the older generation who are isolating just for their own safety.
They feel so alone.
So we're doing that. Yep. Yeah.
People are feeling so alone. Mm-hmm. It's got one gentleman, he's 98 years of age. He lives alone, he's got no family, no friends, and he's needed weekly grocery shopping. Now I don't do it, it's Dominic who's been doing that, but he's befriended this man, and he says even after the grocery shopping stops, I'll still go and visit him every week because he has no one, and we've become friends.
And I think we are very lucky because Compassionate Inverclyde is unique within Scotland, perhaps even within the United Kingdom. I think it's something that has to surely spread out. Because I think not only for the people who volunteer with it, for the people who live within the community, it's life-changing and life-affirming. It certainly has been for me.
It's always been an evolving movement. People come up with ideas about what might help the community, what might help younger people, what the community are looking for, what's needed, what would help staff. And an idea will come in. It'll be discussed very briefly, and people will run with it. They will go away and they will work on it. They'll get a concerned group together, and we develop new ideas and we develop new strategies to deal with issues in the community. I've always said Compassionate Inverclyde is like a family, and this has been a wee lockdown family, and without it, I think we would all have been lost, and this place would have needed to have closed. And this back home box store belongs to the whole of Inverclyde. This belongs to everybody in Inverclyde, not just the volunteers. It is owned by the people out there. So we need to keep it open and we need to keep it functioning. And we need to just keep on giving and sharing and just helping people. And that's Compassionate Inverclyde.